torn apart by Miroslav, so that was, that was really nice. Was anybody at his session? Yeah, that was our longest day. That was good fun. It kind of it took down my confidence a few pegs, so it might take a few minutes to get into this. Okay, so I'm Conor from UCD. This is a work together with my colleagues James and Flavia. It's a bit of a mouthful, so to simplify, what we're doing is providing a framework, which is Miroslav tore apart, no frameworks, to support system building to do with environmental policy. Okay. And basically what I'm going to try and do is convince you in the next few minutes why we need to move away a little bit our research focus from purely technical research towards a wider system thinking. And when I was preparing, I thought this was probably a pretty unpopular view to bring to like the three most technical communities in our domain, but I think throughout the last few days I've been hearing the same message from the likes of Robert Amor, from Miroslav today as well, just thinking about the why. Okay, so it's great to be in Porto. The last time I was here was for São João in 2018, which is a festival where it's the city patron saint, where you eat lots of barbecued sardines and prospective lovers hit each other on the head with rubber mallets. So it's great crack. But what I was thinking about is in 2018, last time I was here, there were 3 truths that we're holding, which are no longer holding. So the first truth was that I had long flowing hair. That is no longer the truth. Apart from the fellow with the hair, is there anything funny you can spot in this photograph? You can just shout out. Anything unusual? Say it again? Some building on the bottom. It's 2 photographs, exactly, right. It's a doctored photograph because there was a tourist was doing some very inappropriate thing in the middle and I had to AI him out. So second truth is that we did not have widely available artificial generative AI. Second truth. The third truth is that in 2018 we had not surpassed our Paris climate agreements, limiting global warming to mean global temperatures to 1.5 degrees. This is no longer the case. I'm afraid to say 2024 we hit that milestone. Actually, it was a couple of days before the last meeting in Morocco. So not great, not great. And I know it's fallen a bit off the agenda politically as well. And you know, we're used to seeing this now, but we know that year on year we're basically exceeding the worst predicted situation. So it's a bit of context. Now, it's not the only major issue, but I would argue that it is a challenge that is driving other massive political and geopolitical issues. It's now proven that pushback to environmental policy has driven the shift we've seen to extreme right politics. So, although it's not the only major challenge now, it is one that is compounding other challenges. So what is this paper about? Well, basically, we're looking at the gap between policy ambition, so environmental policy ambition, and then what are the capabilities in practice, and we call that the implementation gap. What it does, well, firstly, it builds on recent research. So like I said, it's not a technical paper, but it uses technical content from previously published work. If you're interested in life cycle assessment, asset management, asset information management, I'd encourage you to take a look at this paper, which is the technical background to what we're doing. But this paper, argues for a shift from purely technical research to a wider consideration, so the why. Why do that? So this is a little anecdotal, but if speaking to our health service executive in Ireland, a really good example of IT implementation, what they found was that the cost of developing or the resources associated with developing tools was a very small percentage of the total resources. It was actually about 80% for all of the implementation. Did we get the tool right? You know, are the users going to accept it? So the why is really important. So this paper provides a framework, a broad framework, and it's basically saying we usually look at the what when we're doing technical development, and we're arguing we should really look a bit more at the why. So why are we doing what we're doing? And make sure we get the tool right, because the 80% is rather significant, so we need to get the tool right. So some precedents for a framework. They are actually quite useful. They're not just like completely abstract. This is a study from the IEA Annex 72 on like global life cycle assessment from the International Energy Agency. They propose something similar, so kind of a future-oriented, like what we need our tools to do in the future. Some more precedents, and what was quite inspiring for this study was looking at a study from Chirp and colleagues. Now this is to do with the energy sector, but it's about paradigm change. It's about paradigm transitions, and it's basically saying we need to take a very broad view. We need to look at the socio-techno-economic as well as the technical aspects. But I would argue that environmental policy and the information management associated with this is a complete paradigm change in how we need to manage information. It's very, you just saw in the last presentation, it's very complicated, and it's starting to come into regulation. So we need to get that right. So what do we actually do? Well, because frameworks are very difficult to meaningfully assess by sitting stakeholders down and just looking at diagrams, what we did was building on our previous work, we designed a series of user interfaces that basically represented issues in the conceptual framework. So, for example, trust and transparency, future-oriented performance contracting, a bunch of different ideas that come up in the framework. We replicated those as a kind of idealized user interface. We designed a series of focus groups with stakeholders, so practitioners from asset management, experts in the area of life cycle assessment, environmental policy, as well as policy makers. And what do we find? Well, we basically, the kind of things that we heard from practitioners was, wow, this is exactly the problem I'm facing. And now we know that this is an idealized UI. It wasn't actually working. But it gave us a real feeling that we were on the right track. This is the kind of technology that they need to do environmental policy. But we also got some good critical feedback. They found it a bit abstract, a bit not sure where to place it, and I think that was quite naturally was going to happen with taking a really broad set of stakeholders and throwing a few UIs at them. So the takeaway message from the study is basically that we think that tools providers, if they're going to stay relevant, they need to look at a wider range of issues than the purely technical. And I'm not saying that software developers and policymakers are not looking at economic issues, social issues. For sure they are. But if we look at the aggregation, our information landscape in the built environment is completely inappropriate to do what policymakers are now putting in place. Like you said, in Italy, it's too complicated to have a standard, yet European policy is coming which is going to require it. My fear is if we don't get this right, there is huge pushback. For example, and I agree with their motivations, the farmers going in and blocking traffic, pushback to environmental policy, that doesn't work for the people. You know, so I think we really do need to think about this deeply and get it right. So it's about research priority. So I'm asking for the community who are, you basically have responsibility to direct research, right? Now, I know in the European Union there has been increase in research money, not like in the US, the absolutely devastating cuts that we're seeing now. So science is under attack. And if we look at the European Commission, environmental policy has dropped off the agenda. This is the last 5 years, Green Deal right at the top. This has now made space for competitiveness, security and defence, and European values. So it has dropped off the political agenda. And in the scientific community, I just want to encourage everybody to make sure we're keeping money going to the places that are very, very important. Yeah, and just get in touch if that's of interest to you or read the paper.